and we're reviewing the FY22 budget request from, recommendation from the county executive for Park and Planning, MNC PPC. We have a nice packet today prepared by Pam Dunn. Appreciate that very much. We'll divide this as the packet does, so first Parks and then Planning. And I'm going to turn it over to our lead for Parks to chair the Parks discussion. I imagine he'll want to kick it over to the Parks team to share some comments. So, Andrew.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. Really looking forward to diving into this budget. I think the pandemic has provided some scientific confirmation of what this committee has known for a long time, how much our residents rely on the park system and how many of our residents have taken advantage of it. That was true before the pandemic. It has increased several times over during the pandemic. Park usage, trail usage is up upwards of 40%. It's been a key part of mental health, of exercise, of well-being. It's a core part of Montgomery County's quality of life. I know Director Riley has shared a number of articles that have occurred over the last several months that tie increased home values to access to public parks and trails. There's mounting evidence of how important a role 37,000 acres of parkland, 422 parks, getting close to 300 miles of trails play in the everyday lives of our residents, and a key part of what makes live, work, raise a family, and recreate. So with that, I would love to turn it over to the Parks Department, perhaps the either director or chair of the Park and Planning Commission, before we dive into the packet with council staff, which was really robust discussion of some of these key budget items. So with that, maybe Mr. Chair.
By whom you meant Casey Anderson?
Yeah, sorry, Chair Anderson.
Thank you.
I stand here the lesser among multiple chairs, so I apologize for that. I'm a mere lead for Parks, so I'm trying to be deferential.
It's like that part in Airplane. We have Clarence. Roger. Thank you. I'll be brief because I think it probably is, pretty straightforward to just go through the packet. But the one late item is that we, on reflection, we've really come to realize that some of the compensation agreements that have been negotiated by the executive branch for county government employees have some important implications for our budget. And if we were compelled to match them or come in the ballpark of what is being proposed, we would need to, at a minimum, amend our budget request to ask for some more money for FY22. And I don't want to, step out of my role, but I have to say that I am concerned about the sustainability of the budget in light for both us and for the county government, in light of the fact that it appears to be supported by some one-time revenue sources that I'm just not sure what happens in the future if we're pressed to meet these compensation requirements this year, and then that makes it even harder next year if there is not additional revenue forthcoming. That really puts us all in a box. So I just wanted to highlight that because it was late, and also it's a very serious issue. The other thing is that as far as the capital budget is concerned, we do want to discuss the idea of a separate PDF for the state capital funding for the power line trail. We are of the view that it's fine if the council wants to put that in a separate PDF that's in due course, but we really need to get that money approved by the council in the short term, which means unless you're going to do a public hearing in the next month to create a separate PDF, we would hope that you'd put that in the hard surface trails PDF that's existing now so we can get rolling. We need to get that funding obligated because there's a time limit on the state, the statutory requirements that the state has imposed about getting that money out the door. So we're happy to cooperate with a separate PDF, but would hope that for now you would put it in the existing hard surface trails account, and then we would go from there. So with that, unless I forgot anything, Mike, seems to me like it would be good if we just went through the packet.
Fine by me. I just had a chunk of the council's time to deliver the semi-annual, so I had my chance to tell you how we've responded during the pandemic to serve the residents of Montgomery County the best we can. We've been getting more love than ever over the last year from residents about the value of the services we provide. And I just want to say thank you to Pam Dunn for a great packet as usual and collaborating with us and making sure that we all at least understand all the facts the same. If we don't have 100% aligned point of views, we all have the same understanding of the facts. So thank you, Pam.
Appreciate that, Councilman Reamer.
Thanks. I just want to say over the past year, my enjoyment of parks has been one of the few things that was like my life used to be. Taking my kids out to baseball games, especially, we've continued with sports. We had a fall season. We're in a spring season now. We had some over the summer. It was like the one thing that provided some continuity for us as a family, and for at least our oldest son. Our younger, his needs are a little different, but our oldest son, I think it was such an important part of this past year. So, just as the lead said, it has been I think it's been so important to our community, and we've made parks a priority over the years, but it really showed its value this year. So thank you.
Appreciate that. I think it certainly has provided a sense of normalcy for a lot of residents and families, and I think it's even increased as we discussed. I think those who had used it before are using them more, and those who had never realized the benefit that some of their local parks facilities and trails provided to them have been taking advantage of them more than they ever have, and the numbers certainly reflect that. I think, Chair Anderson, your point about the Power Line Trail, I'm very excited about that project. I think it could be a transformational trail project for North-South, and will connect a number of other smaller local trails into it to create the type of regional and countywide trail network that we frequently talked about. I say a lot, the trails are transportation infrastructure, not just recreation. They are that too. And this will really reflect that. And so I agree that we need to make sure that those funds that are all coming from the state can be deployed as quickly as possible. Perhaps we have more time later today after we get through the packet, or at another time in the coming few weeks, we could discuss in particular what the best way to do that. But we want to make sure that those funds from the state, which are a game changer for a project that could be transformational, are able to be put to use as quickly, efficiently, and effectively as possible, so we get that trail built, open, and operational for residents to rely on it. So I appreciate those comments as well. With that, Ms. Dunn, thank you for a great packet, and appreciate all the work that you've put into this, and hope that we can go through the items that you raise item by item. So with that, Dunn.
Okay, are we ready to start then?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to state off the top that the staff report, the packet for today, got posted all as one large document. It does have two pieces. There's a 1A and a 1B. They're all within that large document. Obviously, 1A starts on page 1, but 1B, which does talk about the state aid and the CIP amendments related to state aid, is on page 72. If you're just looking at like the numbers of pages of a PDF, it's at the end of the operating budget staff report, basically. And we will cover it. I just thought I'd put that out there for anyone who thought we were talking about two different things and only thought that the operating budget staff report was posted. They're both together, one big document. So starting with that, we have before us the operating budget staff report. We are going to go through it. On the top of the second page, you'll see some highlights from the budget. Because we're going to talk about this in detail, I'm not going to spend time on the highlights because we are going to talk about all of it as we work through the document. But as you know, the budget for the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission includes tax-supported funds, self-supported funds, debt service, and reserves. And the tax-supported fund, which is the administration fund, and the park fund, they do represent a lion's share of the operating budget and the packet. So most of what we will talk about today. The Commission's total FY22 budget request is $172.9 million, which includes enterprise operations, property management, debt service, and special revenue funds. And then the appropriation required to support the operating budget, again, this will include other non-tax supported items, is $185.1 million. If we just focus on the tax supported portion of the budget for FY22, the request from the Commission is $152.9 million. I'm on the top of, for me, the third page of the staff report, and this represents a increase of about $8.6 million, or about 5.9% over the FY21 tax supported budget. The executive has recommended a smaller increase for FY22. For the administration fund, the executive's recommended budget is about 1.1 million below the Commission's request, and for the park fund, the executive's recommended budget is about 3.2 million below the Commission's request. The non-tax supported operating budget items total almost $20 million, and that portion of the budget is down about $200,000 over FY21. Page 4 of the staff report, you will see that there is a table. It tries to give you an outline of the different components of MNC PPC's budget. It has the administration fund, park fund, grants, self-supporting funds. There is one error in the table, which is the third column. It is the difference between what was approved in 21 and the request in FY22 for section 6, which are the internal service funds. Is just basically using a template from last year and had not recalculated those figures. And that will get updated when we take this to the full council. The table will be corrected. But the total amounts under FY21 and the FY22 requests are correct. I want to touch on the spending affordability guidelines. It is something that the council approves every year. And for MNC PPC, the FY22 spending affordability guidelines were approved at $132.5 million, which is up from the $128.6 million that was approved in 21. And I just want to note that the council adopts this in February. It does not place a limit on the amount that the council can approve in May. It's a guideline for it, but it doesn't prohibit what the council can approve. The next section is really about compensation, and we don't get into a lot of detail in the package on compensation because it's usually an ongoing conversation as we review this budget. It hasn't been fully vetted yet. County typically hasn't figured out what their approved compensation is going to be for county employees. And as you heard the chair of the planning board say, it is very often that the planning department follows closely what happens with county employees. They do that for their employees as well. And they also have to watch closely what happens with the Prince George's County negotiations, because again, they're one commission. And so those things all come into play. Their budget did not anticipate and request funding for, I think, the compensation increases that are being considered by the county. So that is something we will have to revisit probably after today and maybe be an issue for full council.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a minute, Councilman Reamer.
I wanted to compliment the commission for its responsible approach to the COVID pay differential. I thought the way you handled that in your negotiation, which was a negotiation and resolved, proved that there was an affordable and fair way to budget for that and to pay for it and get it done. And needless to say, the amount that you allocated was fair, but significantly less than what the county did on a per employee basis. So I just wanted to say, appreciate your being diligent there. I wish that the county had been similarly diligent, but and then if, I think we need to know what the fiscal impact is of the proposed compensation for FY22. So if you can provide that to staff, after the meeting, I think that'll be helpful so we can be aware of what the implications are. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the point that Chair Anderson was making earlier, I think is an important point. I think, Ms. Dunn, you're right. It's not something we're in a position to deal with now, and perhaps may need to be addressed as part of the broader context of the budget at full council. But I do think it's an important item that we need to fully flesh out and determine at full council before we finalize the budget. All right, let's continue going through the packet unless there's anybody else. And just a note, we have some executive branch colleagues, Councilmember Jawando as well. Just raise your hand or use the raise hand function if you have a question or a point or a comment that you'd like to make. I will call on you when I see you. Thanks. Ms. Dunn?
Okay, thank you. I'm now on page 6 of the staff report, and it really is going to focus on, there's just a brief paragraph that notes out what the major changes in the FY22 budget are for MNC PPC. But the chair's letter that is also a part of this packet on circles 1 through 10 does the same thing. It lists compensation changes that are summarized, as we've talked about, and non-compensation cost changes that include a decrease in debt service, an increase to the Parks National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, an amount that we always budget for, assorted operating budget items of capital projects, new initiatives under a subtitle of investment and critical needs, and operating budget items that are known commitments. The total non-compensation changes as compared to the FY21 budget are about $4 million or 2.8% of the budget increase. So first is the park fund, and for MNC PPC, the FY22 tax supported funding for the park fund is around 11.4 million. This excludes grants and debt service and reserves. It represents a 6.7 million or about a 6% increase over FY21 approved budget. And the executive recommends about 100 million for this fund. So this would be a reduction of almost $3.2 million from what MNC PPC is requesting. And you'll see that on page 6, you have a summary of what the FY21 budget was approved at, the FY22 request, and the executive's recommendation. And then below that, you'll see what the major changes are from FY21 to 22 as it relates to the park fund. And again, as we've said, we can't really get too much into the discussion of compensation, but we'll come back to that, and we'll have further discussions with MNC PPC following today and what they think the impact of where the county is headed on their FY22 request. On page 7, we walk through what are some of the major changes under the operating budget impacts, the national discharge mandate, the known operating commitments, and then program enhancements and deficiencies. These are just to give you a generalized view of it, but we're going to go through more detail because where this really comes into play, and which I think people that have followed this before in the past know, is that what we're really going to start to evaluate is the difference between what the CE has recommended and what the Park and Planning have requested as far as their park fund is concerned. So you'll see at the top of page 8, there was a request to expand the Wi-Fi service for county residents as it relates to county parks. And they requested a $100,000 transfer from the county cable plan. And the county executive did support that transfer. And it's expected that the Government Operations Fiscal Policy Committee will take this up on May 6th as a consent item and will approve it as well. But to get to the, sorry. Did someone want to?
I did.
Yeah, please.
Thanks. Is this the moment where we're talking about the Wi-Fi in the parks, or is that in a subsequent?
No, it is.
That's what I thought. Okay, I just wanted to make an important related point. There has been a lot of allegations about the health impact of wireless radiation. From a scientific perspective, there is no meaningful distinction between Wi-Fi and 5G. It's all non-ionizing radiation. And I think I'm bringing this up because there was an attempt last time to say that we should not allow cell phone antennas for 5G near the parks. And the idea that, first of all, that's ludicrous because we need to have wireless coverage in parks. I was on Zooms while I was watching my son's baseball practice the other night, as you know, my colleagues noted. But you know, a lot of times we go to the parks and we're using our devices in the parks. But secondly, you know, it would make no sense for us to be saying we want Wi-Fi, but we don't want wireless. Like, so when 5G comes back up, I hope that my colleagues in the parks community that wants Wi-Fi in the parks, which is a great initiative, will see the consistency here and say it would not be wise to block 5G in parks, because that's how, you know, far more, that's how a lot of people will access their wireless. They won't use Wi-Fi necessarily, they'll use the wireless. So I want to make that point because it's very germane. Thank you.
Thank you. That will be taken up. I'll be taking that up in the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee, but the expectation is that will be a consent item agenda. Ms. Dunn?
Okay, thank you. So this takes us to page 8 of the report, which is where we are going to get into the difference between what the Park Fund has been requested at by MNC PPC and what the county executive's recommendation is. And typically when the budget comes over and there's a difference between what the MNC PPC request is and the county executive, the commission goes back and it prorates those amounts back to the Parks Department, the Central Administrative Services, the Planning Department, and the Commissioner's Office. So once that is done for the Park Fund, to meet the executive's budget would mean a reduction in what they've requested of a little over $3.3 million. If you look on page 9, what we typically do after we receive this information is we go back to the Park and Planning Commission and we ask them to provide us with information on how they could meet that recommended budget by the county executive. And you'll recall that their budget is created in the fall, so it has been a number of months since they have evaluated some of the components that were elements of the budget when they wrote it. They go back, they evaluate, and it's not uncommon that they find things that they have been able to pre-fund or that they have saved money on that they weren't aware of at the time that the budget was written. And so what you'll see at the top of page 9 is a table that shows these things for the Park Fund. There are a number of things listed here. They show basically savings that the Parks Department can take in their FY22 request. And it ends up being about $1.3 million worth. Taking that into account, what we said before was the difference between the CE budget and their request. It's now about a $2 million difference. And to this end, we then look at what they usually provide, or what they call tiers 1, 2, and 3, and they're prioritized. They're a way for the Parks Department to say, if there is money available above what the CE has recommended, we have a priority of what we would request get restored for us. And the first tier are the most essential items. The second tier are, again, slightly less important than 1, but still things we would like to have restored. And then third tier are, only if funding exists. Again, important items, they were in our budget, but could probably get postponed by a year. But this year is a little different. Like last year, you'll recall, we did continuity of service budgeting, and it was really because of the pandemic and the unknown about what budgets and revenues would be moving forward. And so we really were about a continuity of services from FY20 to FY21. And this year is more of a hybrid. It's similar to the continuity of services, but it's not quite what we used to do, which is we would just look at a complete tier of requested restoration, and we would make recommendations based on tier. In this case, what the council, and as the committee knows, because you've started your budget review, but I'll say this for people who are only watching this budget review and haven't been aware of this yet. What the council is doing is really considering how the funding occurs that is above the CE's recommendation for budgets into 3 categories. And the first category is really, is it funding that is one-time, non-recurring expenditure related to COVID-19 and recovery that could be considered for the unallocated ARPA funding? So that's category 1. Category 2 is there funding that is in addition to the base budget that should be considered as soon as additional resources become available. It is a program enhancement, a new initiative, very important to the work of the agency or department, not necessarily currently part of their base budget, but something we want to consider as soon as there could be funds available. And then category 3 is it a critical expenditure that really should be considered for funding in FY22? And this is where things could get added back to what is on top of the county executive's recommended budget. And I know that the committees are being conservative to how they add anything to this category 3, because again, with the pandemic funding concerns and issues and uncertainty, it's not something that people are going back and adding a lot more funding back into this category 3. That's why the word critical is there. It's a critical base budget item. So with respect to category 1, I reached out to the Parks Department. We had correspondence, and they provided a list of 16 items totaling about $5.7 million that they would request be considered for potential ARPA funding. So those would be category 1 items. So they're not getting funded through this budget process. They are submitted as potential ARPA funding when that conversation occurs later this year. Planning has also contacted us. They have their own list. We will make sure we add that to an attachment when it gets to the full council.
Yeah, can I just note something? If that ARPA list could be sent directly to this committee, that would be helpful.
It is in the packet.
And as it evolves, I understand it's part of this packet, but I assume that those conversations are going to go back and forth. At least one would assume, and if we could just be kept in the loop of how those conversations are working. I see, we have the executive branch here. The budget spends more than the amount of ARPA funds that we are receiving later this month. And so we are going to have to make some significant decisions of how we're going to address that, whether we're going to forward fund ARPA related projects out of reserves, then refund it back into reserves next year, whether we're going to wait to allocate the remaining amount of ARPA funded projects until next May or June when we get the second tranche of ARPA funding. It was always my understanding that ARPA funding was going to be handled in a much more collaborative way between the executive branch and the council. That's not the process that we have undertaken up to this point. So with the remaining amount of ARPA funding, I'm hoping that becomes the case where we don't just end up receiving a recommendation for all of the ARPA funds through the end of next year, actually really through the August of FY23, if I'm not mistaken, when it is intended to be allocated, and that we work collaboratively and in a coordinated fashion, so that the council isn't doing our suggestions and special and supplemental appropriations and the executive branch doing its own, but we do it in a much more comprehensive way. So I just wanted to note that here, and I can turn to Ms. Beck on that as well. Ms. Beck?
I will take that message back. I do think the new things that were added, though, with ARPA funding, we were trying to only do things that we knew council was supporting, working families and some of those other major items. So, but we will be working in coordination with council on this. So I'll take that message back as well.
Appreciate that. Okay, thanks. Ms. Dunn?
Great, thank you. So we did have some items. They are in the packet, but we will make sure that we do good coordination with everyone, that everyone's up to date on what those items are.
I just assume it's not going to be a static list, that there's going to be a back and forth. The budget process is going to change some of these dynamics. Facts on the ground will change these dynamics. And I just ask that the committee be included in the back and forth that takes place and be aware of those discussions, since ultimately the hope is that this is a collaborative process between the council and the executive branch, and we do better, frankly, than we did in terms of planning, in terms of being comprehensive, in terms of being collaborative, as we were scrambling to figure out the federal funding in the early part of the pandemic, which was new for all of us, admittedly. So hopefully we can build upon that. Thanks.
Of course, thank you. So aside from the first category now, it's really looking at the requested items for reconciliation, if there were money for that, and how do they fit in these categories 1 and 2. For the park fund, the first 4 items in the tier 1 priority for restoration are really major known commitments, and they are really considered base budget items. So council staff would support retaining items 1 through 4 in the tier 1 as category 3 items, and this would restoring these items would reduce the park's required reductions by $424,000.6. If that's, I don't know if the committee wants to weigh in on that recommendation.
Well, why don't we go through, you also had a recommend, well, I'll tell you, so there's basically 2 recommendations here. The Parks Department has to determine what their essential needs are in tier 1. Council staff has taken a slightly different position, including some of those. There's an overlap with you know, 1 through 4 and 1-8. My view is I appreciate you know, the council staff's approach here. I also do believe that the Parks Department knows what the greatest needs are for the Parks Department. They're there every day. They're assessing those needs. My preference would be to add the remaining 3 items in tier 1 that were excluded from the council staff recommendation. That would be 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7. That'd be 148,600, 29,280,000, or 280 and 65,000 for those 3 items, and keep tier 1 as it is. That would be my you know, recommendation. I think, you know, adding it to the council staff recommendation is fine. I was fine just keeping tier 1 and deferring to the Parks Department to determine what their greatest needs are. I think council staff has brought up some important points that we're going to hear about in a minute for some of the other items that weren't necessarily included in the tier 1 most essential needs. I think I'd be happy to include those as well. I think you've raised some important points, but I would hate to bypass the judgment of the Parks Department of what the most essential needs are in the Parks Department. Based on this, so I would suggest that we add the 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7 along with the council staff recommendation. I don't know if colleagues have thoughts on that. Councilman Reamer?
Yes, thank you. I think that's a good recommendation. Appreciated the staff's framework. And by combining them, we're also getting 1.8, right? Am I understanding that correctly? Yeah. Which is funding to eliminate gas boilers and so forth, right, Casey or Mike? It's better than funding to buy offsets. It's actually eliminating the combustion of fossil fuels, if I'm understanding correctly.
That's correct. It's that, and also electrification infrastructure in our facilities to, you know, advance to more electric fleet and equipment.
Right. So I think that's pretty.
It's solving for the disease, not the symptom, not treating the symptom. You know, we try our best in the Parks Department and the county government to treat symptoms as they come, but when we have an opportunity to actually cure the disease when it comes to carbon emissions, I think we ought to do it and fulfill the commitments that we've made. And you know, I think it's a long-term investment that will pay environmental and cost-effective dividends.
So that makes sense to me.
So can I just understand, it sounds like we're at a decision point here. Could you just state?
Yeah, effectively, council staff, the Parks Department has created a tier 1 of their essential needs.
Yep.
The council staff recommendation was to keep everything there except for 3 items in the middle, 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7. And my recommendation, it sounds like Chair Reamer has agreed, would be to add those 3 back in, to keep the tier 1 that the Parks Department has determined are their essential needs intact as category 3.
So not the council staff position to have the whole thing included.
Correct.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'd be in favor of the council staff position.
No, I don't think you just, let's make sure we understand here. I think what you just said there, Will, was not what was recommended. If I'm understanding.
Yeah. No, I'm diverging. I want to keep the three things, as council staff recommended.
Not funded. Out. Okay.
Not fund the three items.
Correct.
Cut the three items. Okay, let's list that as a 2-to-1 vote with Councilmember Joando dissenting on that motion. So the committee recommendation will be.
Yeah, I just wanted to also mention I'm 2-1 and 2-2. I think are important to me. So.
Okay. So why don't we move past that, and then I'll turn to you, Councilmember. If we could let Ms. Dunn explain her thoughts on the additional items, and then I can turn to you. Does that work for you, Ms. Dunn?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Moving aside from the recommendations related to Tier 1, this evaluation was looking at each of these items within these tiers to say, one, whether they were program, like I said, program enhancements, critical needs, or they were really a legislative or regulatory mandate. And there were what I would deem 2 items under the second tier that really would fall under that legislative mandate. And this actually is from the Parks Department on circles 24 through 28, 24 through 26 of the packet. You'll see that Parks has provided a little more detail on each of the tiered items to at least note whether it is a program enhancement, again, a legislative mandate, or basically a known commitment. And for item 2, 3, and 2, 4, I really would feel like those are mandated items that we should also fund under a category 3 because they are critical. One is for an ADA publications manager to manage web content, and the other is to fund 2 park maintenance workers to operate their foam stream machine, which is an herbicide-free way to control weeds. And we know that the pesticide-free initiative in the county has been very strong. And so I can recommend restoring the funding for those 2 items. For me, that as a council staff, that's all I recommended under Tier 2, but I will turn it over to committee.
Councilor River.
Yes. Well, I think, I'm open to the foam stream positions. It's not strictly a mandate. It's, it's a programmatic alternative. But I think you could say it's embracing a policy objective, although I think everything here is embracing a policy objective in one way or the other. But I'd like to hear more, I guess, about 2-1, 2-2, and 2-6, if we could hear from the commission.
Okay, 2-1. As you know, we hired a dedicated trail program manager in the last few years. It was a budget position you gave us through the reconciliation process. Like as I mentioned during the semi-annual, almost every advancement I've been able to make in the Parks Department since I've become director has been a result of the council giving me resources during the reconciliation process. I can't remember a year where the county executive's allocation would have allowed me to add positions or resources to the parks. So 2-1 is about the trail system. Darren Flachet is our program trail manager. Even though we like to brag and tout our world-class trail system, his assessment is that to make it truly world-class, we need to add an array of certain amenities, including more bike racks, fix-it stations, trail network maps, kiosk content, interpretive signs, etiquette signs, and other types of things along our trail system, water fountains. So he just sees a host of amenities that'll make our awesome trail system even better and more world-class and more attractive to be a reason people want to live here. That's 2-1. Should I go on to 2-2? 2.2 is an internship program. It's a small amount of money. I happen to be very passionate about this. It's very hard to get internship programs funded, but I would consider this a strong equity initiative. We have certain classifications in the commission that we find it very challenging to grow a diverse workforce, and there would be a high focus on this of creating internships in certain positions where we would hopefully be able to diversify our workforce.
Is that like engineers and planners, or
it would be professional positions. It would be trades positions. A lot of trades positions. We have a great challenge in the trades, both with general recruitment and retention, and then diversity. And I think, Councilmember, you mentioned one more.
2.6.
2.6.
Field inspector.
Yeah, this, as you know, we have focused on fields in a big way. You've given us a lot of additional resources to support Cliff Driver and his team over the years. We've done well on the capital end to get resources to renovate school fields and improve park fields. So this is really an inspector that would be able to keep on top of those CIP projects that are already funded so that we can make sure that they're done on schedule and of course meeting everyone's expectations. I'll just say that Cliff is got his hands full getting the the capital money moved through the door, but on the other hand, I will say in that program we've added a lot of resources, and the only reason this wasn't in tier 1 is we just felt we needed to take a little bit of a breather, reassess that program, look at vacancies across the department, and then maybe come back at it next year to see what we really need.
Which applies as well to items, where are they? There were some other field-related positions in
I think in tier 3.
tier 3. Yeah, I'm just looking for them. Okay. Well, I would propose that we add those 3 items that I've mentioned to, I think it's 2.1, 2.2, and 2.6. See what my colleagues think about that.
Councilmember Jawanda?
Sure. Yeah. No, I understand. Look, there's no reconciliation. There's never any easy choices here. We're all going to have to figure it out later. But I definitely support 2.3 and 2.4 as council staff recommended. I think we should add those back, and I'd also be supportive of adding 2.2, the talent pipeline back in. So those would be the 3 that I would recommend.
Yeah, I think 2.2 is a really important one. I think that is a core part of what the council is focusing on, what we appreciate the fact that park and planning is focusing on, and you can't recruit a diverse workforce unless you're providing entry ramps and opportunities on the front end and through the Parks Department. I think the internship program is one of the key ways that they do that. I think that's also true at planning. So I think there's 2 options here. I would suggest one is to add these all to the category 3, which is an option. There's another option of adding, deciding if we break it up and some are added to category 3 and some are added to category 2, which would be when funding is available. I think that's just something to think about and to consider. Councilmember Reamer.
You can also add it as tier 2 in the, what I would describe as the reconciliation list for this year's budget, if you follow me. In other words, we're already adding tier 1 to what is it, to
Category 3.
to category 3.
So are you?
You can add it as a tier 2 to category 3. It's not like category 3 is just going to get funded. We have no idea what's going to happen in category 3, kind of to Councilmember Jawanda's point. So that would be an option, is to add tier 2 to category 3, and then we'll see how much funding we have.
Yeah, Ms. Dunn, go ahead.
Right. I'm not sure that, I mean, we can certainly, if that's the committee's will and you would like to proceed that way, we can note that for the full council conversation. We hadn't really, as council staff, been informed about segregating items that we put into 3, because these are really considered as critical to the base budget. And I agree. I agree that we're not sure that everything that gets added to category 3 would actually get funded. And so I can see a desire to have some priority. Put that out there.
Yeah.
Anyway, that would be a way to do it that distinguishes the two. And so if there's funding, there's funding. If there isn't, there isn't. If someone else has a different approach, I'd be open to that.
So there seems to be consensus that we want to add it. We're finding out what is the best, process procedurally to reflect the prioritization and to follow the, procedures that we have agreed to as a council. At the very least, there's, quite a bit of agreement on a number of these items. It seems from what I hear. Councilmember Joanna, I heard you were trying to.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, we all, everyone, we all want.
We'd like to fund it all. I mean, I think we all
exactly.
agree that I think Parks does a great job of making a lot out of the resources that they have. I don't think anybody's arguing that. So I don't think, that's not the nature of the conversation.
Yeah. So I'm just, council staff recommended 2.3 and 2.4. I would love to put that as category necessary base budget items that are in category 3. I think we all agree that I hear 3 people agreeing that 2.2, maybe I don't want to mischaracterize it, but I think I hear 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 would all go into that category. I know Councilmember Reamer had suggested adding some additional items.
2.1 and 2.6.
Right. And then maybe this model of breaking out category 3. I think 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4 are good at this point, but I, defer to, it depends on what you want to do, Councilmember Friesen, but,
Ms. Dunn?
I could suggest that you could add the remaining items that aren't 2.2, 2.3, or 2.4 could be requested as category 2 adds. The remaining items in tier 2.
Okay, but category 2 we'll come back to it this summer, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Which I got to tell you, I don't have a lot of confidence in that. I've never heard of that. So
the summer, I think we are going to become, there's going to be a lot of things to come back to in the summer, I think, but,
Well, yeah, exactly. But will there be more money to come back with? So I don't know what to make of that notion. I think it's asking council members to prioritize more, to try to distinguish more between what is really important and what is moderately important. And, I personally, I don't view anything going to category 2 as something we will actually fund, but I could be wrong. Maybe revenue will suddenly be better and we'll have something to do.
All right, let's do a compromise here, if that's okay. I tend to take the position of being deferential to a certain extent to the prioritization that Parks has provided us. And I think that there's a certain deference as well to council staff trying to follow the rule. We don't have to agree always with the exact judgment calls, because some of these are judgment calls of what is and isn't essential. So let's do, my suggestion would be 2.1 through 2.4 as a tier 2 in category 3. So the tier 1, so that would reflect the Parks Department's tiering, so that we wouldn't be putting something that they didn't ask for first when we're making final budget decisions, and we're going to have to make tough calls throughout this budget. And then add 2.6 to category 2. That would be because I share the interest in it. We've done a lot of work and a lot of support for athletic fields. Councilmember Reamer deserves a lot of that credit. This committee has done a tremendous amount of work just in the couple of years that Councilmember Jawando and I have been on it. It's a key priority for us, but that would allow us to come back to the summer. It would also allow for the review of vacancies and other staff changes within parks, and you know, and maybe there
I'm fine with
some
that.
changes
I'm
there.
fine with that.
I think that would be fine then. I don't, okay. And then the rest of tier 3 would also be going to category 2, or that's just, there's no, what do you see for that?
Well, why don't let's agree to that, and then we can go to discuss category 3 with the staff recommendation.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah, yes.
Councilmember Friedson, since you have a lot of desire to support the tiers that Parks has provided, would you want to also include 2.5 in that category too? We haven't really talked about 2.5, but it seems like it's also obviously an important part for them if it's in tier 2. So would it be that tiers items 2.1 through 2.4 are recommended for category 3, and items 5 and 6 are category 2?
I don't feel strongly. I don't think it's, I mean, I heard a lot more interest from council members on 2.6, and so that's why I had suggested that we added. I mean, it's not preventing us from coming back, you know, for other priorities if Parks sees this as a critical priority in the, you know, in the midst of the budget. I don't know if Parks, if maybe we could hear from Parks on that.
Specifically on the one we haven't talked about on 2.5.
Yeah, that's, you know, Parks information and customer service.
Yeah, this is really just about expanding our service hours that you know, people, we try to steer our million residents towards a single source that can be, you know, phone, web, for issues in the parks that we jump on. And this would simply be to expand the hours that's available during evenings and weekends.
Like a phone line?
No, it's our Park Information and Customer Service Center. It's uses Microsoft. I forget the name of the program, but every whether it's through email, whether someone, even when any of you contact me for an issue, the very first thing I do in addition to responding to you is I have it logged in our CRM system, our customer relations management system, so it doesn't get lost. And then we track it through a response, not dissimilar to the county's 311 system. I think we're very quick in our responsiveness. But this is basically a staffed phone line that will, you know, can respond immediately to, you know, someone reports trash in the park, they get locked out of a park activity building because they forgot their key. All these different things. It's our ability to quickly respond, to get the right staff out there. And it's very heavy on the weekends, as you can imagine, because that's when the people are out in the parks. And traditionally, we have not had full.
Are these out? Is this hourly work, or is this you hire a part-time, you know, percentage of a full-time?
This is some career. This is a part-time. The ad would be a part-time career position. Because we find that the people need to build a basic knowledge of the park system to be effective and know who's who and where things get channeled to. So it's really not something that works well with a constant rotation of people.
I'm happy to add that into category 2. So 2.5 and 2.6 would be category 2. And then 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4 would be category 3, tier 2 as the second tier. So the tier 1, as proposed by the Parks Department, would be category 3, prioritized as tier 1. 2.1 through 2.4 in their tier 2 lists would be category 3, priority tier 2. And then 2.5 and 2.6 would be category 2, meaning that we would come back to it should resources be available in the summer. Everyone, I understand there was a 2-to-1 vote previously, so I don't want to get into that, but I just want to make sure that's everybody's understanding and everybody's comfortable with that being the committee recommendation at this point.
Yeah, it's a good compromise. Go ahead.
I'm fine with that. And I'll just say, maybe this summer we can just take up athletic fields generally. Mike has said he's thinking about kind of reorganizing things a bit, and we could come back to that in a general way, and we can look at positions at that time. I mean, you've outlined some here, but you've said we should take a deeper look. So why don't we just put that on track to bring it back and take it up?
I think that's a great idea, and it also is reflective of us doing the deep dive into some of these issues, not during the budget process. I think that'll allow us to follow the process that we were intending to follow. Ms. Dunn, are you, sorry, Councilmember Joanna?
No, I was just going to say, and I'm still waiting for the ribbon cutting, Mike. We got to get that done for White Oak.
I hope you have a date on your calendar, because it is set. I will get it to you ASAP.
Oh, I'm glad I said that. Okay, I don't know if I might, but
It's in June.
Yeah.
It's
very
in June.
possible all of us may have things on our calendar that we're not even aware of at this point. Ms. Dunn, are we comfortable with that as the committee recommendation? Okay, let's move to tier 3, because you had one recommendation here.
Right. So under tier 3, the item that council staff pulled out was the program access program assistant position, which is really designed to increase programming for underserved populations, including seniors and veterans. It also adds some seasonal staff to help in that and to help support individuals with disabilities that are attending programs and camps. And given such a focus that the council has had on equal access and such items before them and those policies, while I know it's a tier 3, I still believe that it would be considered a great item for either category 3 or category 2.
I think it's a really good point, and if colleagues are comfortable, I'd be happy to add it to the tier 2 category 3 group. So that would be 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, 2-4. We would add that as well.
Okay, so that's tier 2 category 3 means we're trying to get it into the FY22 budget, but it's tier 2, right?
Yeah, and reflecting the fact that it's a council priority to do improved outreach to underserved communities, and that's the goal of this, which I think council staff raises a good point.
And that's for, again, you're referring to which one of these 3? Which one?
3-2, which is it's program assistant to promote programming for underserved populations, including seniors and veterans plus seasonal staff.
But
Maybe we could hear from Councilmember. I think you were going to ask Parks. I was going to do the same. Could we? Is it okay? Director Riley, could you share what the intention is there?
Absolutely. So we're probably about 10 years into investing in meeting the requirements of the ADA, and the first years were mostly about facility access and capital projects, a lot of physical work in the parks to make our facilities and parks physically accessible. It was only about 4 years ago that we started a program access person to make sure that everybody has the ability to enjoy our facilities, our enterprise facilities, our ice rinks, our all our programs and camps. And we've built a small but mighty team who each year provides testimonials to me from individuals they've served with disabilities about how grateful they are to how they now have access to our facilities. They also came up with tremendous virtual programs and creative ways to continue their work during the pandemic that I talked about during the semi-annual. So this is they just, and I concur, the demand outweighs their ability to provide services in situations. So this adds a term contract position with a focus on providing increased services to seniors and particularly veterans, which is a big focus to us, and some seasonal staff as well.
Appreciate that, Councilmember Joanna.
yeah, the question I just had was just to confirm. I think this is very important, and I think as I read council staff's recommendation, it's to move it to supports retaining this under the category 3 rationale, but it's saying move it to 2. But what you're proposing, Councilmember Friedson, is this new category, this 3-2. Is that where we're putting this?
Yeah, similar. We would treat it the same as 2.3 and 2.4 in the recommendation, which we also added the 2 items above it.
Great.
We just added to that category to make it simpler. Right?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood where it was going. So yeah, I agree. That's reflective of the concern and that we all have about this issue. So yeah, I agree with that. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, what about the other items in this tier? Basketball court maintenance seems really important to me. I mean, you know, the program that you have resurfacing basketball courts, which I'm guessing this is partly that, is a really good program that a lot of people take advantage of.
I would agree with that. Is there any indication that this is included in the ARPA fund requests, or could be included in ARPA fund requests? I mean, resurfacing of basketball courts is a one-time expense, right?
Well, this, you know, I don't know the answer to the ARPA question, but this is really, you know, tennis courts, they get life cycle renovations about once every 20 years, and this is an operating expense in those intervening years to do, you know, color surfacing, which depending on use, you might have to do every 3 to 4 years, repairing fences and cracks that occur in the pavement, so that during that 20-year life cycle, the court, you know, generally holds up, you know, consistently well instead of simply deteriorating towards the end of life, which we experience a lot. And the same with basketball courts and rims and line striping and pavement cracks. So we just, you know, through our facility condition assessments can go out there and say that we have a lot of courts that as they reach the second half of their life are just not in the condition we need them to be in, and we don't necessarily have the operating resources to go out there and do the repairs that are needed.
I would suggest that we signal this be added to the ARPA request list. It's a one-time expense. It will, not only is it infrastructure, you know, it's maintenance of infrastructure for public facilities. It's also outdoor public facilities that during a pandemic we want to promote people being healthy and getting exercise and outdoor activities, which you know are infinitely more safe than indoor activities. So, you know, to me, I think that would be the appropriate place to prioritize this. Any thoughts from colleagues?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, you know, you're not going to find any argument from the college basketball player to add the courts. I took my daughter out this week actually to one of our courts, and so yeah, I if we can do one-time funding on this, that would be great. I would be curious, just as a separate follow-up, Mike, just about the assessment of the condition of these basketball and tennis courts, just like looking at that at some point. You know, I'd be curious to see that.
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question, because the items you restored on Tier 1 already, 1.6 and 1.7 are exactly about that. That is resources for me to do more frequent inspection of all our infrastructure, both underground infrastructure, building systems, and amenities like courts on a more frequent basis, so that if a court condition is below standards we accept, that I'm assuring that we have the resources to address it, and I'm doing it in the most equitable way possible. You know, I still will acknowledge, as I go around the system, I walk into some parks and I see a series of amenities that are, you know, not at the standard I would like them. And then I go to other parks and everything's up to snuff. So we have work to do. I acknowledge that.
Yeah, and that was 1.6. I want to make sure that just since you brought that up, Ms. Dunn, what did we do on that first, your recommendation, which I went along with, and my colleagues went another way?
Yeah, I'll just note, Councilmember Joanna, just in case you want to change your vote.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
1.6 and 1.7, my recommendation was to add those in to make it the Tier 1 Category 3, specifically for this purpose. I mean, I'm not trying to be confrontational, but that is what those item.
Yeah, that assessment. Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So just I'll go along with the committee so we have the same on all of them and
I
my
should have asked you to persuade yourself before. You're the only guy who can persuade yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we're finding some good consensus here. So the thought process on, I appreciate that, Councilor Joando, and I appreciate the efforts, Director Riley, that you've been taking, actually going out to see these facilities yourself, because you can't quite capture always in a report what you can feel when you're playing with your daughter shooting hoops. So, so my suggestion would be to add this to the ARPA list. It's $150,000. It's one-time funding. I think it's important, something that we all care about and would like to see. I know Councilmember Reamer, you've been focused a lot on these issues and feel strongly about it. So I wanted to see what you're.
I think that's a good idea. Let's see if we can't get it funded that way. Probably a better shot to get it funded that way than through the regular budget.
Yeah, it's good use.
That would be my sense, and it's one-time funding, so we only have rare opportunities.
And we'll have a Fed committee parks game on the resurface report.
Exactly.
I get to pick first. I'm picking well.
Exactly. Okay, so we've added, just to be clear, 3-1 we're adding as to the ARPA request list. The committee's at least signaling that we'd like to see that on the ARPA request list from Parks and to be honored if possible. And then 3-2 we're adding into the Category 3, Tier 2 list.
Yeah.
Okay, which would go alongside the rest of the staff recommendations, which would be consistent with how we've handled the discrepancy, so to speak, between Parks and council staff's prioritization on this.
Sounds right.
And then we're coming back to the fields separately.
Well, so you have items in Tier 3, you have items 3 and 4 that there's no recommendation for whether they go to, we can just, it doesn't have to be a recommendation, or you could add them as Category 2, or just revisit in the summer when we come back to the athletic.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Reamer.
I was saying, I was sort of seeing an equivalency almost between 2 and coming back to it. We were saying we want to come back to the fields this summer, and if there is funding available. Now, if procedurally it is helpful for us to designate that as something that we want to come back to, specifically based on the availability of resources, and if somehow at that time people will say, well, no, you didn't add it then, you really shouldn't consider it now, then I think we ought to say, let's put this on the list of summer priorities. But I was sort of expressing an equivalency by saying all this field stuff, we'll come back to it. So
could I make a recommendation? Yeah. In light of that, my recommendation, hearing what you've said and where this conversation has gone, I think 3-3 is directly tied to the athletic field conversation in Category 2 that we're going to be coming back to. Right. So it would seem appropriate to me to add 3-3 to that same conversation, because it would be silly, or I think ultimately we're going to include this as part of that conversation anyway, or at least we should be, because it's talking about athletic fields, how we maintain them, how we build upon all the work that we've done up to this point. So add 3-3 to that same, come back to it, Category 2 conversation. And then my personal view is I think it's unlikely that 3-4 is going to be funded through either of these processes. And so I would suggest that we take that as a recommended cut. We just include the $314,300 as part of the recommended cuts. That would be my suggestion if there's agreement.
Sure.
Okay. So I know this was a confusing conversation with categories and tiers. Perhaps Ms. Dunn, you could just summarize quickly where we landed.
Yes, I do have it all written down, but it's in my hieroglyphics, so I'm hoping to get to you. But I do think it's all of Tier 1 items are Category 3 recommended for restoration. In Tier 2, we have items 1 through 4 that will be also a Category 3, but they will be deemed a Tier 2 Category 3. Items 5 and 6 under Tier 2 are going to go into Category number 2 to come back to. Then we move to tier 3. In tier 3, we have item number 1, which will now be a category 1 ARPA funding request. The second item under tier 3 will move into that category 3 tier 2 grouping. And then you have the remaining two. 3 is, again, the ball fields thing. So it gets deemed a category 2, something to revisit. And then lastly, we have a recommended cut that will be retained, which is 3-4. I think that's everything.
We're in agreement. I would just make one suggestion. Now moving forward, let's eliminate the parks recommended tiers when we discuss these and just recreate the committee recommended tiers and categories in their own groupings. Because I think it's going to get really confusing if there are, if we retain the parks tiers plus we have council committee recommendation tiers. So I would just suggest, we break it up that way so that we categorize them together, because there's certain things that we're grouping together based on this conversation that are in different tiers of what parks had originally proposed as we reached a consensus on these items. Does that work?
Yeah, and if people want to see what parks did, they can just refer to this memo. You can just,
exactly. The memo, exactly. Thank you, Councilmember Dwan. The memo will be there for posterity. Everybody will be able to see what parks did. I think to avoid confusion, let's look at just what the committee is recommending. At this point in terms of our categories, or else I think we're going to continue to confuse ourselves and the public and all stakeholders.
Too late.
Is there anything else?
Should ask Scott Goldberg if this was all clear.
Yeah. Anything else we need to discuss on the Parks Department or the Parks budget, Ms. Dunn?
Well, the one thing that we look at, which is under the park fund, are the property management enterprise and ALARF. And those start on page 12 and they're on page 13 into page 14 staff report. There's detail about each one of these, how they have gained revenue or expenses over the last year and sort of where they sit. If anyone has any questions or discrepancies with those, council staff doesn't have any recommended changes related to those. They kind of are what they are, but they are part of your budget process that you review those.
Councilmember Reaver?
I did want to ask a question, which I don't think we can do anything about now, but Director Riley and I, I received an email which I forwarded Director Riley from the parent of an adolescent who was assaulted on the trails, and question was raised about cameras and could we do a better job of security on cameras. So I just wanted, since it's before us now, if maybe we could just hear very briefly about that topic. And then I don't know if we, I guess this is a same services, so not much to see here with the park police. But, it's probably, and I don't think we should do it now, but it's probably worth having a conversation about the alignment of park police with some of our other policing reform issues. And I think Chief McSwain is on, but we could, maybe at some point down the road here, touch base and find out how the park police department is handling a lot of these same challenges that we're working through at the state and county level. But I don't think we should do that right now. I would invite the chief to just make, a comment, and then that could help us as committee think about, how might we want to take this up down the road.
Well, thank you, council member. I certainly appreciate it. And I certainly agree with your comments in general. Not sure if you received a copy. I know I have sent it to a few council members regarding our most recent year in review, if you will. Talked about, of course, some accomplishments this year, issues they deal with, peer intervention and implicit bias training, and a few others as well. Certainly want to thank Councilmember Jawanda for his support in helping us to get into the coveted ABLE training program, which deals with peer intervention. His support of that allowed us to be one of the relative few agencies, if you will, across the nation to get in one of the initial training opportunities. But as you talk about technology, one of the things we really stress in the report is that is indeed the next frontier to help us to become that much more efficient and effective in what we do. Of course, our goal, first and foremost, is to prevent crime in the first place. But one of the challenges with such a large park system, we can't be everywhere at all times. But the cameras will be extremely helpful in helping us with case follow-ups, and which of course means less victims, if you will, and of course some closure for the respective few victims that we do have in our park system. So we are certainly, obviously I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because that was not a budgeted discussion, if you will, today as far as time is concerned. But there are many, many other things we talk about there. We did develop a Safety in the Parks Committee to ensure that our approach to safety is more holistic, in addition to technology, but also usage, conflict resolutions, if you will, among many, many other things, to include signage and a few other initiatives. So happy to work with you. And indeed, we are certainly well focused on many of the national discussions and also the local discussions regarding police reform, and always willing to work with the public to ensure that we represent best practices and meet the needs of all parties.
Appreciate that. Yeah, appreciate you raising it, Chair Reamer. I think it's a really good topic for us to take up after budget.
All right, so we'll just make a note. Thank you.
Appreciate what you're doing, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Director Riley, anything you wanted to add before we move on from the parks budget here, the park fund?
No, I just want to thank you for your continued support, and cross my fingers that we can get some of these items restored at the end of the process. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate all your leadership, and we're proud of our parks and trying to reflect that in our budget. Ms. Dunn?
Great. Thank you. So at the top of page 15 of the staff report, you've just had a very brief conversation. This really was segue into the park police part of the budget, which is really a same services budget. And if you have any questions on the budgetary part of that, I know that Ms. Farag is here. She does this portion of the budget for us. She can answer any questions, or we can move on to the administrative fund.
I think we can just move on, but I wanted to just say, if Ms. Farag, not for now, but let's think about whether we want to just do a review, and maybe it can be staffed because everything looks the way we want it to look, or maybe we want to have some more conversation. But let's do a review of how our department fits and is embracing the new state policies and so forth. I mean, there's been a lot of progress made around police reform issues, and I'm very interested to see how it's applied at the Parks Police. So as Andrew said, we come back to that later, but it'd be worth putting on our list of potential committee meetings. Thanks.
Yeah, we've talked as a council about having a follow-up to the conversation to our county police department. And so either separate conversation or as part, as a, kind of cordoned off part of that conversation, since it's a different force, but perhaps related issues, I think that would be really helpful and prudent. Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. We'll take that without objection and have the follow-up in-depth conversation after budget. Thanks again, Chief.
Okay. We are going to move on into the administrative fund. The administrative fund also covers the bi-county central administrative services, the commissioner's office, and the planning department. The budget request for the administration fund was about $34.8 million, representing a $2.3 million increase over last year's approved FY21 budget, which is about a 6.9% increase. The tax-supported portion of the administration fund, which excludes grants and a transfer to the development review special fund, is a little less than that. And the executive recommends 33.6 million dollars, which is 1.1-ish million dollars below the commission's request. This is on page 15. And if you turn to 16, you'll see there's an overview of the planning department. As we go about talking about how do they meet the executive's budget, there was an update to the commissioner's office budget, in which case they won't need to take any reduction, and they actually help support some of the reduction to non-departmental expenditures. But looking at the planning department on page 16, you'll see that there are actually 10 divisions. I have a slight typo there. And then the number of work years that are related to that. It's 151 positions that are recommended for FY22. The planning department's work is organized into 4 programs. They have master planning, regulatory planning, information services, and management administration. Look at the top of 17, you'll see how these break down with the work years. And they've asked for a full-time funded career position for a research analyst and a full-time career position for a forest conservation inspector, and then a full-time position that is converted from a part-time position for additional support in the Historic Preservation Office to help with analysis and research.
I'm going to yield back here to the chair of the committee, since we're now completely through the parks piece, and I'll let Chair Reamer take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your work as lead for parks. Appreciate knowing that you're always on top of it. Thank you. Okay, Pam.
Okay, I'm on page 17, and what you'll see there is a table on the bottom of that page, which is the Planning Board's proposed FY22 additions to their work program. You had some discussion of this at the semi-annual, although there was no in-depth conversation about things that the council or the committee wanted to add or amend or anything related to that. It was really an update on kind of where things stood, with some mention of the possible program items to be added. So I imagine that planning might want to chime in here to explain some of the things that are on the bottom of 17.
Okay, hang on a sec, just catching my breath. All right, you said we're on the bottom of page 17.
Mm-hmm.
Initiatives and professional.
Yeah, the work program gets set during this portion of the budgeting process.
Yep. Okay, and we are right. So we had a work program presented to us at full council, and we discuss it now, and we see if there's anything we wanted to do differently.
Yes.
So here's the proposed work program. So I don't know, maybe Gwen could share with us a little bit of background on these items.
Thanks. I'd like to actually start with the information that's on page 18 of your packet, because a lot of our requests for consultant dollars really relate to specific projects that are in our work program. As you can see from what Pam Dunn has put together, we've delivered and completed a number of master plans recently, including the Germantown Town Sector, the Shady Grove Minor Master Plan, and we're very close to the end of the Ashton Village Sector. What you're going to be seeing next is Thrive Montgomery 2050, which was a very large initiative, and that has been transmitted to you, and we're anticipating that you'll take it up after the budget season is complete. You'll also, in calendar year 2021, be receiving our Complete Streets Design Guide, which we've been working closely with MCDOT on. The Planning Board has actually completed their review of it. It's ready to send to you, but we have been coordinating with MCDOT, who wants to send it along with some updates to necessary executive regulations and other rules and documents. So we're trying to bundle that all together and send it to you as one package. And then you'll also be seeing our Rustic Roads master plan by the end of the calendar year. For calendar year, and again, we're talking not fiscal, but calendar years in the chart on page 18, we're going to be giving you 4 items. The Great Seneca Science Corridor Plan Phase 1, which comes along with a recommendation that you'll be hearing about for us to do a Phase 2 of that assignment. We have been asked by the council to take up the staging element in the Great Seneca Science Corridor Plan as a discrete task, and that is what we've done. We think that it should be followed up with a more holistic look at that master plan, and so we are proposing that as a work program item for the upcoming fiscal year. We are also going to be giving you our recommendations in the Corridor Forward I-270 Transit Plan. You'll be seeing the Silver Spring Downtown and Adjacent Communities Plan and the Pedestrian Master Plan. So those are 4 very meaty, important planning documents that you'll be seeing in calendar year 2022. So we have also been thinking about and starting on projects that you won't see until 2023, including a Tacoma Park minor master plan amendment and the Fairland Briggs Cheney master plan, both of which have begun but won't be delivered to a council. It will be a different group of people by 2023 who will be looking at Tacoma Park and Fairland Briggs Cheney. So we're always, and we have a number of individual studies and projects which are also listed on page 18. As we are doing this work, we're always thinking 2, 3, 4 years out. And so in addition to the projects that are listed here, we are looking at a schedule that is going to include a number of new studies that relate to specific priorities that we have as a county, and some new master plans. Taking the theme of the Thrive Montgomery 2050, we are going to be trying to focus more of our future plans on corridor planning. And we see Fairland Briggs Cheney as the first step in that process. It is very much focused not on the original Fairland planning boundary, but really on the corridor along the new BRT line. We also are going to be proposing new projects like a University Boulevard corridor plan that would run through a variety of different planning areas and focus on the corridor. Those are projects, again, that are ones that may only just start at the tail end of fiscal year 22 and run into fiscal year 23, but we're always, again, thinking ahead. So I don't know if you want to go into the list of projects that we think need to be considered for restoration now, or if you want to talk about our general work program before we talk about those items that are needed for restoration in order for us to accomplish that work program.
I don't have any changes to your plans, that I would like to propose or talk about. I did want to ask, October 2022 for the Silver Spring Downtown Plan. That's a year and a half from now. Is that or more? Is that right?
Well, we'll try to get it as quickly as possible, but we are not. We're in the visioning phase now. We had been just a month or so completing the initial sort of data gathering, fact finding kind of phase, but now we're in the visioning phase.
It feels like it's been going on forever already, doesn't it?
Well, I could say that about so many projects, yes. But we hope to have our recommendations to the planning board probably in September, and then they will need to work through them and have their public hearings and work sessions. And it takes a while to work its way through the process. We would love to honestly get it to you sooner, and if we can speed it up, we will look at doing that.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure what exactly I think there, other than, as you know, things are pretty hot right now in the context of that plan, and the prospect of having a year and a half of acrimonious argument is not terribly exciting.
Yeah, the timing of this plan has actually turned out to be a little bit more challenging. I guess that plan is going to be, coming in 2022, when I'm sure there will be a lot of discussions and run up to the elections, and that's the challenge. But I'm ever the optimist that we're going to be able to work through a whole variety of issues and come to you with a plan that has a lot of consensus and community support. That we aren't going to come to you all with a plan that is, still being strongly debated. I see our job as trying to hear all the different viewpoints, listen to them, and come up with a good planned solution where not everything is pinned down to the minute, but that a lot of the big issues are resolved.
Thank you. That's what we need you to do. That's what we need you to do. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then as far as Thrive 2050, Pam, have you heard any news about scheduling that for public hearing yet?
No, we received it just last week, and so what we'll need to do is get an announcement onto the council's agenda to get a public hearing scheduled. We should talk about what type of preview that the council would like before the public hearing. We've been having a discussion about whether there should be multiple previews before the public hearing, since it's such a large document, or is there just the one? Is it possible that then maybe the full council wants another full council briefing after the public hearing, but before the committee takes it up? So a couple different ideas have been batted around to figure that part out, but my guess is within the next week or so, it will get introduced at the council and the public hearing date will get set.
Got it. Thanks. Okay, good. Any other comments from colleagues? If not, we'll keep going.
Okay.
Could I just be on record as expressing the view that we will all be better off if this project is scheduled as quickly as possible? And I'll just leave it at that. If anybody'd like to talk to me offline about why and all the wherefores, I'd be happy to, but that's my 2 cents.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and we know the council has a busy agenda. We have a lot of assignments that are, sort of waiting in the wings. And so again, with Thrive, it would be good to get it worked on so that the items we've listed here that come to you all for action in the fall can get their due attention, as well as the attainable housing strategy that we're also supposed to deliver to you in the summer so that you can consider it in the fall. So your work plan for the rest of this calendar year is pretty full, at least from a planning perspective. And we hope to keep everything on track so that it doesn't back up.
Gotcha. All right, so we'll circle back with Pam. Thank you. Okay.
So I think if you've had a great preview and overview by Director Wright on what the current schedule is on page 18, what those plans are on page 17, and then you'll have a detailed plan explanation of what their proposals is for initiatives and professional services. The first two are at the bottom of page 18. They really are about supporting master plan work, the Tacoma Minor Master Plan Amendment support, and the Briggs Cheney Master Plan support. And then you see on page 19, providing again, what do those professional services cost, and what is the scope of those services. And it's bikeway branding, the commercial space study, e-commerce, Wheaton downtown study, an access management study, innovative housing toolkit, and a redlining segregation mapping tool. Those are the items. There's 9 of them. On page 133 through 134 of the budget book, it lists these services. They are proposed to increase $360,000. It's a 131% increase over the FY21 budget, which you'll remember was a continuity of services budget, so really didn't provide support for a lot of professional services. 2 professional services efforts that were not included under the new one-time or ongoing are at $30,000 for special counsel requests and $25,000 for updated tools for the biennial transportation modeling. And that effort is basically a major known commitment because it occurs every couple of years. On page 20, it really gets into the similar conversation that we've just had on the Parks Fund with related to planning. We will get to CAS in a minute. We do have to cover that as well. But it's really about the reductions to meet the county executive's recommended funding level. And again, like Parks, planning goes back and reevaluates the budget, given it was written in the fall, and finds things that they can either pre-fund or save. And those are listed at the top of page 20. Taking that into account, to meet the executive's recommended budget, planning department must reduce its request by $451,700,000. To this end, they have also created these tiers. They have 2 tiers, and they've listed what they would restore in those tiers. They have 3 items in tier 1. They have 5 items in tier 2. And again, just to remind you, similar to Park Fund, council staff has been requested that the council consider budgetary items in these 3 categories: ARPA funding, because it should be considered when funds become available, and anything that is a critical expenditure to the base budget. Council staff reviewing these items sort of in the same light of reviewing Park Fund, what would be critical for maintaining the services or the work that the planning department does. These professional services, they do provide valuable input to the work that the planners at the planning department are doing. They are basically money that comes into the planning department that they write a scope of work for, write an RFP for, then they get professional services outside of the planning department to do the work. But 2 kind of rise to the top because they really do focus on things that the council has deemed as critical interests. One is the innovative housing toolkit, and the other is the redline segregation mapping tool, which staff would recommend keeping as category 3 funding items, but the rest will put into the category 2 category for future funding.
Okay. I had a question before we get into these specific ones. We had began a conversation about the metro stations and, lining up with Metro about key priorities for each of the station areas as they were moving forward. Does that need a program or funding tied to it to ensure that we maximize the resources that we've intended, or are you able to handle that within your existing capacity?
Well, I think our work with Metro is ongoing, every day. We are working on master plans that affect specific metro stations. We're talking a lot. We did talk a lot during the Shady Grove plan with WMATA about the Shady Grove Metro. We talked with them a lot during the Forest Glen Montgomery Hills plan about that metro station. We're talking with them now about the Silver Spring Metro station as part of the Silver Spring downtown plan. We have some other work that is going on with them at other metro stations. We continue to work very closely with them on the Grosvenor Strathmore. The other one that we think is really important is Wheaton. And I did want to say, so number one, I really appreciate Pam Dunn's recommendations. She has recommended of our tier 1 projects that 2 of those be added to your category 3 sort of essential work program items. I would like to argue for the third one, which is listed as 1-3, the Wheaton Downtown Study, to be added into that category as well. And part of it relates to what Chair Reamer just brought up. We have talked with WMATA about ideas for the Wheaton area. We know that now that we're living here, we love our new headquarters, but we see that there is still a lot of unrealized potential in downtown Wheaton. We think that the WMATA properties are a big part of that unrealized potential. We think that similar to the advancing the Pike District study that has been done, that we think is making some good moves to help push the whole Pike District in a positive direction, that the Wheaton Downtown study could do the same kind of thing, and that we hope that part of that downtown study would be to take a look actively at the WMATA properties in Wheaton and how they can really be better used to revitalize and make downtown Wheaton everything it could be. So I emphasize that this Wheaton Downtown study is not just sort of a, nice urban design study, look at a few streetscapes, that kind of thing, but it really is intended to take a look at the opportunities in Wheaton that still are untapped, and WMATA properties are a big part of that, and to think about how to realize the full potential in downtown Wheaton. Sort of in the way, again, that advancing the Pike District is working on a number of issues in that part of the county.
Thank you. Very helpful exposition there. Appreciate that. I totally agree. I'm very excited about the redlining and segregation mapping tool. We started that conversation in the Beersmill plan, and we asked you to do a deeper dive and share with us some of the history of how those developments, when they were put in as suburban developments, may have had restrictive covenants or other manifestations of government policy, to promote segregation. And I thought it advanced the conversation, and we talked about, could we do something that was a bit broader of a look? And so you've presented us with this option of creating a mapping tool, which I think I sent over after DC. We saw DC had done something like this, and it was very intriguing. So I think that's a worthy expense. But we should also keep our eye on the ball for the here and now. And Wheaton is a wonderful community that is also a very diverse community. And what you're talking about is a way to have some foresight about how that will change over time and ensure that we are able to preserve the community, or enable the community to persist and thrive. And I think that's an important task for us. So let's hear what colleagues say, but certainly my recommendation to the group would be to just go with the planning department's tier 1 and then agree that we would come back to the other items. So to my colleagues, Andrew.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that, adding the Wheaton project, keeping it as tier 1, and then coming back to the other items.
Just looking through, make sure I understand. So you were saying.
So I think you can, we're saying, so on page 20, there's a tier 1 there.
Yeah, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3.
Correct. So we keep those, we recommend those for inclusion immediately in the budget. And then tier 2, we say that can be, let's come back to it this summer I guess that's category 2.
Category 2. So category
Tier 2
3
is
would be
category
all of
2.
tier 1, and category 2 would be the balance of the non-resident.
I'm fine with that. I think that makes sense.
I want to say that, and I just want to say to Casey and to team, like, I have some heartburn about not doing the logos and signs for the breezeways and the greenways. You know, what's the timing for those?
Yeah, we are looking actually at trying to find, that's a relatively small pot of money for the bikeway branding. And we are looking to see if there may be a small amount of end of year money that we could direct to that.
Okay.
Because we agree with you that that's a very, very important project. It was in the budget last year and it didn't get funded. It's in the budget this year and, you know, keeps sort of falling to the bottom of the list. It's a very small amount of money and we're going to see if we can find some end of year money to direct that way.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to hear you say that. And please, you know, it would be very helpful, I think, to find that. So if you can't, let us know. But that's good news to hear you're trying to find it. So thanks.
Yeah, and if I could just, Director Wright, the redlining, the item 1.2, the redlining segregation mapping tool, I'd like to know just a little bit more about that and offline. You know, I'm sure you probably shared something, but I didn't see it. So just wanted to flag that for you.
Yes, we'd be glad to do a briefing for you. I mean, we have a number of interesting projects going on. Our GIS team has already done a lot of work on equity focus areas. We mentioned some of this as we were describing the Farrell and Briggs Cheney plan during the semi-annual. And we actually also have a project this fiscal year on developing an equity opportunity index that we're working on to help us measure if we're making progress in some of our equity goals. And this mapping tool is another element of our efforts to both, you know, identify what those equity goals are, understand from where they come, and to then have ways to look at whether our plans are making progress. But I'd be glad to set up an offline briefing for you on it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and it might be, Mr. Chairman, if you know, it could be we have a briefing just on the equity tools and work in general at the committee. Maybe when we have time, if we can make it in, but in the interim, happy to do the one-on-one. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you certainly, I'll be envious if you do a one-on-one because I you know, let's when you think it's time to walk through it at the committee, when you've got enough there that you know you're ready to kind of get some feedback. I'd love to let's have that committee session. So please,
we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, great. Okay, so I think we have a 3-0 on the budget recommendation. Thank you. All right, let's keep going, Pam.
Okay, we're now doing central administrative services. CAS provides the administrative functions for both Montgomery and Prince George's portions of the Bi-County agency. They have human resources and management, finance, legal. They also oversee the Office of the Inspector General, the Office of the Chief Information Officer, the Merit System Board, and corporate IT. The FY22 Montgomery County portion of the CAS budget before chargebacks is about $9.3 million. It's an increase of about $250,000 or 2.8% over the FY21 budget. Each year, there is an allocation of costs is determined between the two counties. For FY22, the allocation between the two counties is approximately 45% of the central costs is attributed to Montgomery County and 55% to Prince George's County, with the exception of the Merit System Board, which is split evenly. On page 22, you will see a breakdown of the different departments under CAS and what their FY21 approved budget was, what their FY22 request is, and the difference between those two amounts. CAS must reduce its proposed budget for FY22 by about $260,000. That's its prorated share to meet the executive's FY22 recommended budget. And like Parks and Planning, they have also gone through and figured out if there's any savings that they can take. And they identified about $59,000 To meet the executive's recommended budget, CS proposed non-recommended reductions. Really, everything ended up being in Tier 1, but they did it by all of the departments under CAS. And so those are listed on the next page. The amounts of their non-recommended reductions by department and sort of a brief description of what those items are. And it's really difficult when you look at this as an analyst, because CAS is supporting the work of the departments of Parks and Planning. It is an administrative function. Many of the things they do are necessary to make sure that everybody can get their work done. However, again, in this light of looking at it, is it a critical base budget item or not? Suggested that certain things would need to be retained, sort of delaying the replacement of aging IT equipment would not be beneficial to people getting their work done, or the hiring of an IT systems manager, or freezing a position for a legal administrative specialist, or eliminating professional services to the merit board. It's a very small office with very few staff, so they rely on that additional help. So council staff supports retaining funding for the first two items that are listed under the corporate IT, those related to the equipment that I was just speaking about, and the IT manager, the legal administrative assistant position, as well as the support for the merit board. Restoring these items, we reduce the CAS portion required reductions by about $88,000. It would still require a reduction in their budget of $114,000 for Montgomery County. And what this would mean for Prince George's County, because you have to look at that as well. If we reduce an item or say they can't get funded, there's the Montgomery County that can't get funded. There's also the Prince George's County portion that can't get funded. They have to agree to that. And for Prince George's County, that amount would be $142,000. So they might want to chat about this now. So really, we're looking at the list that's kind of at the top of page 23.
All right.
Tracy, go ahead about it.
Say that again, Cynthia.
Oh, I was just asking if you wanted me to.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Great. So I wanted to talk about a number of these items, especially with funding staff, and they may not have been explained that way, but a lot of the actuarial services and the temporary services has to do with staffing. The actuarial actually has to do with our union negotiations. So the reason we were able to keep down costs with the union negotiations and the hazard pay is because we are going back every single month and we're negotiating with the FOP and with McGeo. And so actuarial services, they're asking us about retirement plans and all sorts of stuff that we're trying to do to take money off the table. But we need to be able to go to these specialized services and get that information. And so that's what that actuarial service is for. It specifically deals with our negotiations. I'm going to talk about the temp service and the finance, and then corporate IT. The finance there basically is lapse in salary, and our temporary services for DHRM would be bringing in folks on a temporary basis when people are out. We just went through our performance management report, personnel management report this morning, and we have a fair amount of folks in finance in our accounting series specifically who are going to be eligible to retire within the next 5 years. I would say we're looking north of 50%. And so we have open positions and we need to fill them. And so this money there, because we had to take this cut, is lapse and it's not filling those positions. And we really, really need to fill those positions. Again, these are the folks who process payroll, who do procurement, that type of work. It's essential work. And so I would request on behalf of our finance department and that we get that restored, or part of it restored, something restored, as well as the temporary services. I think you're right about, we shouldn't delay our IT systems management or updating our equipment. So, travel expenses, that's fine. Even training we can delay a little bit. We can work towards doing a lot more in-house training. But I will say that all these things our actual known commitments are going to have to be restored next year because the training has to do with a lot of the diversity, equity, inclusion training that we want to get in place. We are going to hire a diversity, equity, inclusion, specifically a person in corporate HR. And so this would be the funding to be able to put these trainings in motion across the commission. So that's what that first item is. I'm happy to answer any questions, or our budget director, if there's anything else maybe you think needs to be added, please feel free.
Thank you. Pam, what do you have for us here?
Right.
And by the way,
So
I think this may be your first time before the committee, but we're really pleased with your work at the commission, and excited for the commission to have you on. I know it's been quite a while now for you, but
it's only been a little more than a year, and I appreciate that very much. It's been very challenging trying to lead an organization in union negotiations virtually when you've only been there 2 months before. So, but you know, we're rocking and rolling. But thank you.
Hold the line. You're doing a great job. As I said earlier, you know, your negotiations over the COVID differential were very effective. So hats off to you.
It's because we went back every single month. We didn't just kind of do a blanket. We went back every month based on what was going on, and we negotiated. And it's a lot of work on that end, but at the same time, it definitely affects the outcome.
Yeah, like $100 million worth. Okay, Pam.
Yes, so what you have before you is on the top of page 23, where council staff had recommended we're restoring the listed items for the merit board, the first 2 items under corporate IT and funding. And what you're hearing from CAS is that they want, have considered also adding to category 3, the 2 items that are 2 and 3 on this list, the actuarial services for collective bargaining and the temporary services for people that leave, since they have a staff that is getting close to retirement age, in addition to the funding under the finance department. Again, that has to do a lot with staffing. They're taking laps. The things that they were willing to continue taking the cut for because they don't see as necessary but could look at it in a future budget year would be the travel expense and the training. So I hadn't included the 3, I guess it's 3 additional items that CAS is asking for to be considered category 3 restoration.
Colleagues, any comments here?
Yeah, I'll just add, I think I would agree with the council staff here with the items for restoration. I appreciate the comments previously, and so yeah, I think this makes sense to me.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with staff M&A as well.
Very good. All right, let's go with council staff. I think we have unanimous view there. Council staff's recommendation. Wish we could do more, of course, but.
And I'll just reiterate that we will have a committee session with the Prince George's County Council scheduled for May 13th. If they don't agree to the same cuts, then this budget will stay as stands. And so then actually what will happen is the commission will have to find out how to absorb figuring out how to take this. If in fact the council agrees with what the committee decides, then there will be a certain amount of reductions that are not restored. If Georges doesn't agree to that same set, but the council's already approved the budget, then the commission will figure out how to fund that. And we can make that clearer as we go through the council discussion.
Okay.
The next are the special revenue funds. They start at the bottom of page, and they really just provide very detailed information about the different revenue funds for the commission and what their status is in FY22. If you look at the page 25, you actually see what the beginning of the fund balance is, what the proposed revenue is for FY22, proposed expenditures, and where they end up with a projected end of year balance. The commission's asked for a $500,000 transfer from the administration fund to the special revenue fund, and the county executive supports this request. So there isn't a lot more to do with this, except if you have any questions on it, and then to also agree whether or not you think that transfer is appropriate.
Okay. Okay. And your view, you support that transfer request?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Seems worthy to me. Executive supports it as well. Thumbs up from Mr. Jawando. Thumbs up from Mr. Freeds. All right.
All right. And the very last section before we head into talking about the state aid for the CIP is just a very brief section on racial equity and social justice considerations. And as you know, that the county executive or the executive branches were, I guess they were provided with some questions related to social justice and racial equity. And as they applied to their budget process, the commission's, not being a county agency, wasn't provided the same sort of reference or point, but each one of the funding areas under the commission, so the park fund, the administration fund, and the and CAS, they all provided information related to what they are doing budgetarily and within their programs related to racial equity and social justice, and those are included in the packet on one of the circle pages. I think that's on 41 through 44. And so this is just the start of a conversation that will occur, I think, from here on. When you have a budget discussion in budget years, we'll be also discussing how the framework for racial equity and social justice is incorporated into the budgeting process. Just wanted to start that this year.
Yep. I guess I was sort of expecting it to be more of a point-to-point, but I guess we're just not quite there yet procedurally. Yeah.
Right. And I actually think, if you, for the commission, this is going to be a harder lift to be very detailed about, given the breadth of their budget. Their budget is a, 2-3 inch thick document, and if every program has to be evaluated, it could be something that is done separately, or maybe follows or precedes it. The county agencies tend to have much more brief budgets, and so it is a little more straightforward for them to be able to provide some of this information.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the packet. Did anyone raise a hand there? I couldn't tell. No? Okay.
Okay. With that, we can turn to page 72, which is the CIP and the state aid amendments. As you know, the committee met on March 4th and approved MNC PPC's proposed amendments for the FY21 through 26 CIP. But the state typically just takes longer to get through their general assembly process. And so their work was recently approved, came over with state aid totaling $1.6 million and an allocation of $8.8 million in program open space funding, and then an additional $10 million in funding for one specific trail, which we'll get to. If you look on, I guess it must be page 73, it lists out what the bond bill funded projects are, the PDFs, the actual PDFs, which legislative district they're in, what the project is, and what the description is, and then the amount of the funding.
I'm sorry, you said page 72. I took me 10 minutes, but I got to circle 68. What page are you?
Oh, hold on. It's not a circle page.
Oh.
I'm looking at the PDF itself. So
does anyone know what circle page?
After circle 45, it starts. Go to circle, because it comes.
Might have to take a break for a few minutes, and then, all right, let's see.
If you go to circle 45 and then advance it one page, you should be at the start of the 1B packet.
$43, $44, $45, $46, $47. It keeps going. Does anyone else have this? Is anyone else looking for this page here?
The circle pages?
The circles are kind of off to the side for me. Is that?
Yeah, they really aren't working, are they?
Yeah, well, I see a circle in 46 and 45. These are the bond projects.
It's page 72 on my PDF.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have 100.
If you go to page 72, if you have it in PDF form, it's page 72 of your PDF, I believe.
Got it. There you go.
Are you good? Everybody good?
Yes.
Okay. So if you advance it one page and go to page 73, you're going to see what I just said. These are the specific projects that were given bond bill grant funding. They were for specific PDFs, specific projects, and for specific amounts. And those are all listed there, and that totals $1.6 million.
Great. Congratulations and thanks to Planning and Parks, or the Commission, for working with the state delegation. I think this is a really smart, effective way to get more resources here, and it's very tangible. I'm sure our state delegates and senators really enjoy the opportunity to support the parks in their district. So, great results. Well done.
I will note for the committee that with respect to the Willett Branch Greenway project, the state had awarded $400,000 under the Acquisition Local Parks Capital Project in FY21. So what the commission's requesting is to consolidate the state funding for the Willett Branch Greenway into one capital project and to place that into the Legacy Urban Space PDF.
And is that money going to just go into a fund that keeps stacking up until there's enough to buy something, or are you actually going to use that to buy something now?
We're targeting specific acquisitions now that will use up the multiple years of funding that have come from the state shortly.
Okay, good.
Okay, if you advance it onto the next page, you will see again, it's just the same summary as before, but it actually provides the reference in the state legislation. With respect to program open space, the state budget has included $8.8 million in revenue for that. And the CIP has programmed $7,875,000. So with the remaining $925,000, what the board is asking is that get placed in the Legacy Urban Space Capital Project as well, so that we are getting some real, volume there in the Legacy Urban Spaces. We know that those projects tend to be the most expensive to acquire, and that's just a shifting. And then lastly is the Powerline Trail Grant. So this was the dedicated grant. It was for $10 million to fund the trail that would basically connect the South Germantown Recreational Park to the Cabin John Regional Park. And if you go down on the next page, is again, a summary.
Before you move off this one, I just want to say congratulations and thanks. This is awesome. It's been a dream for a long time for a lot of people, and it was very savvy to make it part of the Pepco merger, to be able to force Pepco to grant some of that access, and then the remaining question was money. And once again, another smart play of the cards to grab that funding and direct it here to this trail. As Councilmember Friedson said, it's going to be a huge asset, and be a regional parks asset. I think people are going to use it from all over the county, and it's really just going to be a huge addition. So, well done. All right, keep going.
So on the last, I guess.
Did we settle how we're going to do that, though? I thought I was with Chair Anderson there that let's get it in the budget now. Is that what you're going to go to next?
That's the only last piece that's remaining on page 75 of the PDF. I just give again a summary of what are these actions that the state funding is being posed for. It summarizes them all there. Council staff has no question with any of these. These are great. It's great to get the funding into the budget. The Powerline Trail did come over as $10 million under Trails, Hard Surface Design and Construction PDF, an existing PDF. That's fine. That does put the money in there right away. It allowed them to access it right away. But do request that when the 23 to 28 capital budget is done, which is the work for that is already starting at the planning board. They're already being briefed on how to create and come to you with that CIP, the full CIP for next year, that they create their own PDF for the Powerline Trail. That's not unusual given it's a project of such a big size, and it gives them plenty of time to do that. It won't even be before the council for another 9 months, 8 months. And in the meantime, it exists in another PDF. It'll just be a transfer from one PDF to another through the next capital budget. But for now, it'll appear under the hard surface trails.
Okay, and what's the timeline for construction?
We need to get things going within the next 2 years, I believe, in order to meet the state's requirements. So we're going to do this as quickly as possible.
As fast as we can. I can't cite a definitive schedule of start of construction and end of construction, as we're just working with PEPCO to really get the ball rolling again. But as we're going to hit this fast and hard.
Good plan. Andrew.
Yeah, the biggest challenge that we're going to have here is making sure that we're deploying these funds as quickly as the state has required it. So we need to be doing everything that we can to allow parks to accelerate the funding. I think the idea of including it in the hard surface PDF for right now, making sure that the funds can start to be deployed, work and planning and other things that need to happen can move forward, and then addressing it through the full CIP, which I think can be worked out by staff working with all the relevant entities and agencies makes sense. But for right now, we've got to be able to move forward. I think the key point here is we don't need more money. Unlike some other projects, it's not like the state put in 10 million and the project can't get started unless the county puts in additional share, or unless we get federal grant funding or something of that nature. This project can move forward with the 10 million that the state has provided, and it will just be, we'll build as much as we can with the funding that we have. And it could be that part of this trail gets done now, within the next 2 years, and then we add to the trail and build upon it from there. But this is different than other transportation CIP projects, and the reason why trails tends to be handled as it is that you can do trails by mile, by segment, by section. It just so happens that this section is a very large portion of it. It could be about half of the total project north-south, and that is a significant boon that we are being provided by the state, in addition to all these other projects. I mean, this could be a transformational moment for the county's parks and trails network because of the work that the state delegation did in providing us with these resources. So I just wanted to note the differences, with this. It is in many ways, in my view, a distinction without a difference because the county is not required to add our own funding in order to move the project forward.
Yeah, no.
If that were the case, it would absolutely need to be its own standalone CIP project, given the size and scope of the project. I think Ms. Beck.
Yes, thank you. I did want to also say kudos to Parks. They did a great job at the state this year. But on this one, I do want to just confer with Pam and Park and Planning staff. It may be advantageous to do the new project as part of this budget process. I just want to talk through some of the mechanics because there are some limitations on transferability, and I just want to make sure we don't run into any problems. So, but obviously it's a great project. It's wonderful.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I think staff, executive council, and Parks leadership can huddle up and make sure that we're doing everything. I think we're all on the same page. Everybody wants to make that these funds can be deployed as efficiently, effectively as possible. This is a major benefit that we're getting with no county budget impact, which is a game changer. There was a question of whether we were going to be able to do this, in the next generation with county resources. Now the state has provided us the ability to do it, within a couple of years, which is significant. So I think we're all in agreement.
So yeah, if we need to do something quickly in this cycle, we can do that. Absolutely. And otherwise, let's start with plan A here, or, backup plan. Make sure we don't get behind on that.
We'll clarify if there's any issues with transferability, and if not, we'll move quickly on whatever we need to do.
Okay. Great.
If you, as a committee, need to approve then proposed allocations for the appropriation of state aid in the CIP by the planning board.
So moved.
Second or without
Second.
objection? Second, third. All right.
Really excited about this, these set of projects. Great job to our team and the advocacy to get it done.
Right on.
All right.
And kudos again to the, our state delegation, which really, in the wee hours of the session, were able to come up with significant support for the county that will have generational impact. I mean, these are projects that are going to stand the test of time and make a positive impact for public facilities for generations to come. So it's just really, I couldn't be more excited about this.
Well, you're lucky it's in your district, my friend.
Some are, some parts of it are, but several of these are in different districts, and Willett Branch is in District 1, but there's certainly a lot.
Oh, you're referring to all the other ones.
Right,
Yeah.
and then the
Yes.
power line trail. The power line trail is partially in my district, but it actually, I mean, one of the interests of the state delegation is that it spans multiple, districts going north-south, and so there was widespread interest in a project that wasn't just in one district, but really was a countywide project. And I think that was one of the real strengths of putting this project as a consensus project by the county delegation.
Yeah, that's right. And I know that there's a couple people who've poked at me about this offline about how, well, it's the west side of the county, so is this an equity area? And this trail will connect Germantown to Bethesda and everything in between. And obviously, there's big parts of Germantown, Gaithersburg, et cetera, in that alignment that are in fact areas with high proportion of populations that are of equity concern in terms of income, racial and ethnic composition, all those things. So I think this is going to be a great project. And one of the great things about trails is precisely that they tie different communities together. And, that's an emphasis in the general plan. The idea, there's something that gets overlooked sometimes, the idea that different kinds of people of different incomes, different races and ethnicities, different interests and social backgrounds all are interacting together in a public space. That's one of the reasons why trails are so important. And this trail in particular is going to tie together a lot of very different communities. So that's really exciting.
Good stuff. Looking forward to getting that rolling. Thank you. Great job. Okay. Well,
I think
we
we're
have a
done.
minute recommendation. All those in favor of everything we've done today, raise your hand. All right. And it's unanimous. Thank you to the commission and staff and OMB and everyone. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your work. And we will see you next time.
Yeah, which is every